Hello, chat. Happy 6 p.m. to everybody. Oh, Siri thought I was talking to her. Anyway, I'm not talking to Siri. I'm talking to you guys. Welcome. Hope y'all are having a good one on this Monday evening. It is Monday, right? Okay. Gotta keep track of the time. So, today, we're probably going to spend a lot of today looking over things, because I finished every other card off stream. I think the last thing we were doing was the Martial artists? I think that's what we were doing. We had like a couple of them left and we didn't get to finish. So we'll start there. Hold on. I'm going to turn off my heater. It's getting a little stuffy in here. Alright, I'm back. Okay, so hydrate first. So this is going to be pretty chill. Just going to explain my thought process on the changes that I've made to each given card. Oops. There. You can see it now. Yep. Okay. Where should I put chat? I'll put you on the left. Okay. So, I did make a bunch of other changes up here to like the rule book and stuff, but I'll go over that later. So who was the last one we were working on? We were looking at Omar, I think. We couldn't decide what he should do. Or if we should like how we should change his specialty or his signature. So used to he would gain defense when he didn't play a card, but since defense isn't a thing anymore, I decided to change it to something else. So this is if an opponent's artist plays a work this round, this artist's specialty has a drive cost of 0 next round. So the idea was that grapple prevents you and the target from using works. So if you allow your opponent to use a work, then grapple is free next round. I feel like it's I feel like grapple is well balanced by itself enough that you can make it free that often. Because, you know, it puts Omar and the target out of commission, basically, for an entire round. So Sergeant Mulaney changed a lot, mostly because his signature changed. I'm going to put you on the right instead. So it used to be reversal. which allowed him to ignore the first 3 points of damage he would take. But it seemed kind of situational, right? So instead, whenever he would take damage on the round he plays it on, he gets +1 attack and then attacks back. I also changed it because I wanted to base the martial school around damage and boosting attack and stuff. And I felt that the change to reversal to counterattack still had the same like spirit of the move. Right. You benefit from, or it's only useful when you get attacked, but it has a benefit when you get attacked. Also, hold on. I was going to play some music as well. Can you guys hear that? That should be... Wait. There you go. Got some music, this is from an online game music radio. So, I'm not sure what's going to play, but just some extra background noise for us. So with that in mind, what Sergeant Mulaney used to be able to do was basically look through the deck at the top of the round for his specialty and put it in your hand. For one, well, mostly it didn't really thematically pair well with reversal. So instead, he has counterattack, and whenever this artist would take exactly 1 damage, you reduce that damage to 0. So, Sergeant Mulaney still kind of inherited a little bit of reversal into his design, but only if he only takes 1 damage. So you have to commit to dealing damage to Sergeant Mulaney if you want to do anything, especially if he has counterattack active. Lysaea II did not change at all. Basically, her ability allows her to be a 5th ego. She attacks as if she's a 5th ego on the ego phase. Because her whole flavor is that she's sort of, she's a fighter who's, she's embraced, like, the power of, like, the id, you know? Which is sort of like the more extreme version of the ego. To put it very simply. So, she sort of is, like, pseudo, like, ego. You know what I mean? So that's her thing. And Zegeis Isasts used to have solid stance, which would mean his target couldn't be changed by opponents. And whenever an artist changes their attack, that artist has -2 attack. I mostly changed this because there weren't very many effects that changed targets, so it's very niche. And because solid stance changed to a different ability altogether. I actually did it. Oh yeah. So now it's toss around, which switches egos positions and also deals damage to them if both of your artists are martial. I couldn't for the life of me figure out something else that, like, paired with it that wasn't specific to that specialty. So I decided to make it so that any ego you use toss around on can't be reduced to 0. Can't be reduced to 0 health. The idea here is that this can help set up for your own artist to take out an ego, or if you know that an opponent's targeting a specific ego, you can basically make them invincible until the end of the round. Sorry, chat. Okay, so I'll move to the musical works now. So, as I said before, one of the things I wanted to focus on was giving a specific sort of focus or archetype to each school. I apologize. Give a specific archetype to each school, right? So, culinary has healing or drive gain, or regen right now, but I'm kind of thinking about reverting regen, like as a mechanic, like taking it out, because I think it might be overcomplicating things a little. And you could easily just do the same effect with, like, you know, just gain drive directly, you know. So I think I might rework that. But basically, yeah, culinary can heal. Crafting is drafts, which I think I also might remove for the same reasons. I think it overcomplicates things a little. And I think it puts far too much focus, maybe, on like getting rid of attached works. So I think instead of craft being focused on drafts, it'll just be focused on, you know, using attached works as resource and detaching or retiring other attached works, you know, without all the drafts complicating things. What else? Literary is about, like, you know, the hand drawing cards. Intel. Martial is attack, like gaining attack and doing damage. So I had some thought about what the other 3 should do. Those being musical. Wait, what are the other 3? Musical, visual. What am I missing? Performing. Right. So musical, I decided it's a little bit unorthodox, but musical's whole focus or theme is changing the numbers on already existing cards. Right. So you'll see as we go on what that means. So diss track used to just reduce drive, which is superfluous now because you just deal damage to remove drive like that. So instead, diss track retires a work attached to the target artist, and numbers in results of works played by target artist become 0 this round and next round. So let's say somebody tried to play id fist style. Like, you played diss track on an artist, and they played id fist style, right? So it would reduce, since this is a number in its results, it's treated as 0 now. Everything else happens except it deals 0 damage instead. Or if they try to play counterattack, or that's not a good example. Okay, hold on. I was gonna use sparring as an example, but that would mean divide by 0, which I guess you can't do. Well, how'd that work? This artist has additional regen equal to the combined base attack of both artists divided by 0. I guess you just wouldn't do that because that's impossible. But it would also mean that this has 0 regen anyway. So in a lot of cases, this track kind of just makes works a little useless unless they have something that's not related to you know, dealing some number of damage or whatever. But yeah, that's kind of an example of talking about like manipulating the numbers and the wording of cards. Also, I tacked this on here because I felt like each school had to have at least one card that that retired a work, made a draft, or interacted with drafts, and interacted with regen. But since I'm planning on reworking that idea, I might have to take a look at those particular works again. Glissando used to be that for each flipped work attached to the artist, they dealt 1 damage. So for every attached work that was flipped, it dealt 1 damage. Instead, it deals 1 damage to target for each 1 in the results of works attached to the artist. So if an artist has Harmonize attached to them, right? It has 2 1s in its results. So when you play Glissando, it deals 2 damage because there are 2 1s in the results. I think this kind of archetype, like this kind of idea of using the numbers themselves, might open up some really weird, like, synergies. So, kind of interested to see how that works out. And I also increased its drive by 2, since that can easily get out of hand. So, I made sure to at least make it a little more expensive. Harmonize. Set the target artist's defense to be equal to 1 less than this artist's defense. Defense isn't a thing. So, instead, this artist has +1 regen for each artist with exactly 1 regen. Works as it sounds. Might mark this for death, actually. Actually, you know what? Maybe I should do that. Mark that for death there. That's a little dramatic, but you know what I mean. I need to take a look at these again. Remix. Oh, and it costs less too. All artists must target a new artist. I decided to remove that because the theme for performing is targeting. Targeting and something else. What was it? I wrote this down because I knew I'd mix things up. Yeah, performing deals with targeting and turn order, stuff like that. So remix costs 2 now. It allows you to choose a work attached to an artist. The numbers in the results of that work become a number of your choice from 0 to 2 inclusive. So you can let's see. You can make it target harmonize, right? And you can set each of them. You can set your chosen number to 2. So now they have +2 regen for each artist with exactly 2 regen. Or you could set it to 0, which wouldn't do anything for you, honestly, but you could. Tribute. This artist has a signature from an artist in your artist deck from now on. That I changed because the theme for visual actually is interacting with your graveyard and your vault, and I figured that would be an effect more suited to that archetype. So tribute is now key change, cost 2. Instances of target artist in results of works attached to target artist become this artist. And hold on. For each one. Okay. So let's see. You could use that to change, where's the first one that says target artist? Okay, yeah, so this is an instance of target artist that would change to this artist. Right. For example. Maybe we could do vice versa on that? Or we could just save the opposite for a different card later. It's less efficient that way, but maybe it's better that we save some stuff for later. Tune Up is the same, just has different wording. Yeah. So basically, the next work you play, any numbers that are in it go up by 1. So similar to what we had before. Overture. Deal 2 damage to the target. If this artist's remaining drive is 2 less than their base drive, this artist has +2 drive from now on. So the idea for Overture was that it would be an attack that you could use for free, basically, but only if you used it with full drive. I felt like this kind of damage dealing would be better suited in Martial, and since drive gain is going to be more common now, I figured that it wouldn't be as difficult to actually use, which I think it should be somewhat challenging to, or not challenging, but you shouldn't just be able to use it whenever. You should have to time its use, you know what I mean? So instead, it changed to Sting. And it allows you to deal 1 damage to target ego for each instance of target ego in results of works attached to this artist. So, essentially, the more you're targeting egos with a particular artist, the more damage this will deal. Leitmotif is exactly the same. Flip and unflipped work attached to target artist. Target artist executes the results of the flipped work on their target, if able. This isn't strictly like within the theme, I guess, but it was just a really fun effect, so I figured I'd keep it. I mean, it's kind of related. It's directly attached to card text, so. I also reduced its cost by 1 since it seemed a little bit niche. The only time artists will have unflipped works on them is if they're copying things. So, yeah, it's not gonna come up often, and it might be difficult to actually flip a work that is useful. So I made it 1. Country song. Choose 1. Your opponent must discard a work or retire a specialty attached to target artist. Both of those effects would fit better in different schools. So instead now, it costs 1. It costs 2. Choose 1. Deal 1 damage to target ego for each work attached to this artist that has 0 drive cost. Or attach 1 draft to this artist. That's another one that I'll be looking at again. And finally, Whole Rest. Costs 1. If this artist does not affect any cards next round, works that this artist flips that costs 0 drive costs 1 drive costs 0 drive instead from now on. Changed basically because of how much setup this requires. Because not only do you have to figure out a way for your artist to not do anything on purpose, but you also have to wait an entire turn after. Like you play Whole Rest, and then you do nothing on the next turn, and then you get the benefits. It takes 3 rounds for it to actually do anything, so I decided that was far too slow and changed it to draw 1 work for each 0 in results of works attached to this artist. Which I think a few have, but yeah, 1, 2, 3. There's actually 3 works in the musical school that have 0s in them. Including this one, actually. This does count as a 0. So you get to draw at least 1 card. This is a rare instance where, like, I know normally I would say card draws for, like, the other school, but we can't really, we had to make sure not to tunnel vision ourselves too much, right? Because every school should be able to do at least a little bit of everything. But the archetypes are just to give it more, like, focus, you know? So, the artists. Amaveli Tutlio, basically the same, except instead of turning -1s into +0s, he turns -1s into +1s. It's a little bit more useful. change the wording on that right quick. Its instance of -1 on the results of works played by this artist become +1. Yep, okay. That got off. Emmy Warble. This artist may copy their specialty with any unflipped work as long as their specialty is flipped and attached to them. Basically, what this would mean is that as long as your specialty is attached somewhere, then whenever you would be able to flip, then you can, like, it's like you can copy remotely, I guess. I don't know. Does that make sense? You could copy from anywhere as long as it was there. I mean, I feel like, okay. I mean, this is the best and shortest explanation, actually. I confused myself just then. But it doesn't matter because I changed it because Harmonize changed to a regen effect. So now whenever an artist with 0 regen gains regen, you can draw a card. So another example of some card draw. The Ostentatious Rib. The Ostentatious Rib is perfect. However, I had to change, or I changed up his special, or his signature, because Diss Track now does something else. Yeah, it retires works and sets things to 0. So now he takes less. He cannot take damage from artists with less attached works than him. Used to be with less remaining drive, but Diss Track does not reduce drive anymore. Oh, I guess I need to mark that then. Raymac Rhodes uses Country Song. At the beginning of the play target phase, you may choose to replace this artist's specialty with Remix from now on. She's the same, just change the wording up. And Ottawa Stefan used to have Tribute, but now has Sting. Whenever this artist is replaced, the new artist has +1 base drive. She has a new specialty, so instead it's egos with damage in their strategies take +1 extra damage from damage sources. So if an ego has the word damage somewhere in their strategies, then they take more damage. Which pairs well, obviously, with Sting. Okay, next up is the performing works. So again, the whole idea of performing, I guess I didn't explain my rationale for music and why it's the way it is. Musical was the last one I came up with. It is sort of unconventional, but I was thinking, because if it wasn't literature that was doing this kind of thing, I suppose it would have been music, because, you know, music is about, you know, the sequences of notes and the values of those notes. You know, a lot of music is like mathematics and in some sense numerology. So I figured it was a good as fit as any. I tried to cover every sort of facet of the game, right? Like the hand is one like sector, and then the you know, targeting and order is another sector, and the graveyard is a different sector, you know. And in this case, I'm considering like the card text itself like a sector of the game, you know. So that's kind of my rationale for that. I think it makes for a very unique sort of archetype. Opens up some opportunities for obscure like work combinations, right? Because you're not necessarily even looking at the effects of works to pair. You're looking at just the numbers on them themselves. Okay, anyway, so performing. Performing is all about targeting, manipulating targets, or manipulating targeting itself, like who you're choosing to attack, and interacting with turn order, or relying on or manipulating turn order. Sort of as a way to emulate, you know, the movement aspect of most performing arts. Mostly, yeah. I mean, not every performing art is obviously about, ostensibly about movement or whatever, but I figured it fit, and the archetype needed to go to somebody, so. The first up is Cross. Same thing. No changes. This player's artist switch zones. Just change the wording there. So if you think your other artist has the better positioning, that your artist on the bottom could use the positioning of the one on the top better, you can switch them. Pretty simple. Impassioned Routine. Okay, so the old Impassioned Routine says deal remaining drive damage to target. Now, not only was this confusing wording, some people didn't really get what this means, but what it does mean is that you use Impassioned Routine, right? You reduce your drive by 1, and then you look at the number, or you look at the remaining drive that the artist has, and you use that number as the damage value. Now, even in the old version of the game, this was bazoinkers busted, because you could play it on artists with high drive and deal like 7 damage at once for one drive. And drive is even higher now in this version of the game. So yeah, I figured that needed to change. So instead, Impassioned Routine deals 1 damage to target for each point of drive spent by artists this round. Which includes the drive spent by Impassioned Routine, so at least deals 1 damage. But it's still based on drive, right? It still looks at drive being spent. But it also benefits from going later, because, you know, the later it is, the more opportunities there are for artists to spend drive. There's still opportunity for it to deal a lot of damage. But it requires a little bit more planning and strategy. You know what I mean? Other than just killing an ego in 1 hit for 1 drive. Actually, maybe it should cost 2. Yeah, I'm gonna give it 2. So it'll at least deal 2 damage, which is not bad, because I don't think performing has much damage dealing. So Okay, invisible box. From now on, whenever this artist would take damage, you may discard 2 works to reduce that damage to 0. Once again, this is an effect that I think I want to save for literary. So instead, this invisible box became the designated draft work. Attach 2 drafts to this artist, and then whenever this artist would take damage, you may detach a draft from them to reduce that damage to 0. So same basic idea, but adapted to be working with drafts. Need to adjust that. Punchline. Deal 1 damage to target. 2 if this work is flipped last this round. Has changed to deal 1 damage to target for each work flipped or copied this round. Actually, I can probably change that. Well, no. See, I was about to change it to for each work played this round, but then it wouldn't matter at what point it flipped over. You know what I mean? Cuz like playing happens in the play target phase. But flipping and copying goes. Hold on. I know what I'm talking about. But like if punchline goes last, then more works can be flipped before it than if it goes like second. You know what I mean? So that's the idea for punchline. And actually now that I'm thinking about it, I wonder if we need one that benefits from going first instead of going last. Because Impassioned Routine is kind of just punchline, but better. I mean, at the very least, Impassioned Routine is on par with punchline. Like, if you play Impassioned Routine instead of punchline, and the same thing happens, Impassioned Routine is always going to be better. The only thing that changes is that you spent 1 more drive to use it. I'll put a note there. Maybe I'm thinking maybe one of these should benefit from going first rather than going last. Not sure how that would work though. We'll see. Tango, pretty classic. Target must target this artist this round. Reworded to target changes their target to this artist. A lot more clear. A lot less confusing sounding. Yes, and for each work flipped this round, deal 1 damage to an artist or an ego in range. So the idea here was that it's kind of like what punchline is, actually. It's almost identical to punchline. Except instead of dealing all your damage to a single target, you'd be able to split it amongst different targets. But since Punchline does the old Yes Ands ability already, like it's too similar, I change it to deal 1 damage to each unique artist or ego that is targeted. So basically, the more diverse the targets are, the more effective this is. So theoretically, for each unique artist or ego that is targeted. Theoretically, it can deal 1 damage to up to 3 targets. Maybe we should reduce the... Because that's not that strong, is it? I mean, dealing damage to several different... Well, you know what? I'll reduce it to 2. Because it's not guaranteed that you'll get all 3. But your effects... The abilities that are available to you via being a performing artist help you set that up. So I'll set it to 2. Death-defying stunt changed quite a bit. Deal 3 damage to target. If this artist is retired this round, you may replace them with themselves. If you do, all of their works remain in place. So kind of like a Hail Mary attack, kinda. But now I change it to deal 2 damage to target. But whenever this artist would be retired this round, you may instead set their drive to 1. If you do, they have +5 regen next round. So it kind of does the same thing, except it's the designated regen work now. It allows you to barely survive, but if you do survive to the next round, then you can gain. Then you would gain like 5 drive back, at least, if you attacked. So like you'd have to keep them alive long enough to get that big boost in health back. Is the idea. Quick change act. Replace this artist with an artist in your artist deck. All works remain in place, but the new artist has -2 base drive from now on. I reuse this effect for a visual artist later, or for visual work later. So I changed it to misdirection. It costs 1 now. Target artist changes their target to an artist or ego adjacent to their target. So if they're targeting an ego, then they have to change their target to either the ego above them or below them, or to the artist across from the ego that they're targeting. You know, that same thing goes with if they're targeting an artist. You know, it's like a cross shape. Slapstick. Target must target themselves this round. Change to target changes their target to themselves, so a rewording. But also, it if the target's an artist, retire a work attached to them. So this got the bonus retire effect added onto it. Which I don't think we need to change the ones that retire things. That's fine, but we'll need to look at the draft ones.
You're listening to Game Music Radio. Brought to you by rpgamers.net.
I apologize for all this yawning chat. I don't know what's got me so tired. I took a nap earlier. It was like a 20-minute nap. Maybe that makes it worse. I thought I read that somewhere, right? Like, if you take a nap, it's got to be at least like an hour long, or you're just gonna make yourself more tired. Anyway, hypnotic trance. Target artist's school is all from now on. This seemed like a powerful effect, and it didn't really match with the theme of the school. So I changed it to target artist may choose to flip last at the start of each flip phase. If they choose not to do that, then their school becomes all that round. So if you use this on a artist at the top, or who's going to go first, then before the flip phase starts, they have to choose, do I want this artist to go last, or do I want them to have all as a school? Now, if their school is all, then that means they can't use anything except for all works. Or works with the all school. Right, which kind of shuts out most of the cards in the game from being used. But you can get around it, obviously, by using a work that is all, right? It's hard to talk about all works because it sounds like I'm talking about all works. But it's all about that inflection. So, the, where is it? The musical works. Or the musical artists. Wait, no. We're doing the performing artists. Starting with Gershek Bloom. Whenever an artist flips a work that costs 0 drive, this artist has +1 drive from now on. Impassioned Routine changed. So now it reads, whenever this artist flips or copies a work, they may spend 1 extra drive. If they do, they may change their target. So not only does this allow them to change their target on the fly, given the current situation, but spending extra drive pairs with Impassioned Routine, which deals damage based on how much drive has been spent. Matt Cross. Yes, and at the start of the flip phase, this artist may choose to flip last. I figured that this was probably something that could just be a work. I think it is anyway. So, and also yes, and changed to deal damage to every unique targeted card. So now it says, while your artist's targets are adjacent to each other, this artist has +1 attack. So it benefits from having both of your artists target a different target. Add that too. Just for extra utility. Wamelin Woa. Did not change at all. The ego across has target artist. Wait, has targeted. It should say targeted artist across. Has targeted artist across above their top strategy. So basically, what this means is that the ego across from Wamelin will prioritize targeting any artist who targeted Wamelin, right? Which pairs with Tango, because Tango forces an artist to target you. Premier Shelby had Invisible Box, and this artist's base defense is equal to the number of works in your hand. Invisible Box uses drafts now, so instead, when this artist is played, search your portfolio for their specialty and put it into your hand. Shuffle your portfolio afterwards. Huh. Well, it doesn't have anything to do with the work itself, but because truth be told, I couldn't really find a good specialty or a good signature for Premier, so maybe I'll take another look at him later. And finally, Orville Mccorville. He had death-defying stunt. Whenever this artist replaces a retired artist, deal damage to the ego across from this artist equal to the number of cards in your graveyard divided by 2, rounded down. Now, not only is that a mouthful, but death-defying stunt changed to a regen ability. So now he has, while this artist has exactly 1 drive, they ignore any amount of damage less than 2. Which pairs with Death-Defying Stunt, because it can leave you at 1 drive. Okay, we're almost done with the cards. We're making better time than I thought. So, finally, the visual school, visual arts. The theme or archetype for visual is the graveyard, or interacting with the graveyard and the vault, which is the pile where all of your reserve egos and artists are. I mean, completely candid, I don't really have a justification for this. I just wanted one that interacted with the graveyard. And all the other schools had more fitting archetypes already. And I felt as though visual arts sort of feels like the default like art form. You know what I mean? I mean, like, I don't mean to, I don't know if that sounds like I'm throwing shade or whatever at every other art form, but, basically what I mean is, like, when somebody says art, the thing they think of initially is, like, painting or drawing or something like that, right? So I feel like visual arts is the sort of default art form. You know what I mean? And that, to me, it lended sort of a quality of like jack of all trades. Like it could have been anything, and it seems reasonable, you know. So I decided visual arts would be the one with graveyard potential. If you really wanted to stretch it, you could say maybe that like it reflects how visual art draws on the inspirations of the past and stuff like that, but that would be a stretch. But anyway, starting off, we have a work that doesn't interact with that archetype at all. It just deals damage. But every school needs to have at least one damage dealing work, right? So for visual, it's broad stroke. Deal attack damage to target, and 1 damage to an ego or artist adjacent to or across from target. So again, that sort of cross-shaped pattern. And that deals 1 damage to 2 different targets, which is pretty nice. Pretty flexible as well. And that didn't change. It's the same. Capture the moment. Target must target their target again next round. That might seem familiar because I used that effect for a musical work instead. Wait, no. I used it for a performing work instead. So now, capture the moment. Puts the top work of your portfolio into your vault. You may declare unflipped works as copies of that work. So, you don't... It's sort of balanced by that you don't know what is on top of your portfolio, which is your deck in this game, when you use Capture the Moment. But it could give you something pretty chill, and it opens up a lot of strategy, a lot of strategic opportunities. Actually, you know what? I think Capture the Moment might be pretty strong, actually. I'll make it 3. I'm not sure what would happen, though, if Capture the Moment was the one that you got. Well, I mean, it would work like anything else, but it would kind of be rather pointless, eh? Well, if you use Capture the Moment several times, then you can have several works in your vault that you can use as copies, which itself is really strong. So yeah, that might be a pretty powerful effect. Chisel. Deal 1 damage to target. Target has +1 attack. Same thing in the new version, except now, if the target is an artist, retire a work attached to them. So, again, just sort of attaching this retirement effect to a card here, because at least one of them needs to be able to retire things. Cool colors. All egos in range must use their bottom strategy this round. Again, this doesn't really have any bearing on the theme, but I thought it was a cool effect, so I kept it. And again, going back to the sort of jack of all trades aspect of the visual arts, I think more than any other school, it fits to have sort of an even spread of more random, disparate effects, and then the other half of the works being focused on the given archetype. So, 6-hour tattoo. Target artist flips work... Target artist flips first next round, and this artist flips last next round. So that's more so for performing. So I changed it to a black work tattoo, which, fun fact, is a I had to look this up because I was wondering if there were like terms for different styles of tattoo, and black work refers to like the really big, bold, like black geometric shapes, sort of style of tattoo. So this allows you to play a work from your graveyard next round and ignore its school. Now you don't have to play it on the artist that used black work tattoo. You can play it on anybody. So this opens up some nice cross-pollination. Straight line. Deal 1 damage to target ego. 2 if target is a cross. Seemed a little vanilla. Plus, I need to have a wait. Oh, right. Okay, so my rationale here is that not only is it kind of vanilla, but I also needed works that put cards in your graveyard, so you had stuff to work with in your graveyard, right? So, scrapbook costs 1. Retire the top 2 works of your portfolio. Deal damage to target equal to the first work's drive cost. So, it's putting works in your graveyard, but it's also dealing some damage, kind of like as a bonus, mostly. And in this particular school, most of these works are cost 1. There's only a few that don't cost 1, which is a 2, a 3, and a 4 and a 2. Right. So you're most likely going to flip a 1 and deal 1 damage. But it only costs 1 anyway, so you break even in that regard, so to speak. Doodle. Draw a work and reveal it. This artist has additional drive equal to the drive cost of the drawn work from now on. Discard the drawn work. Doodle became the designated regen work. Retire the top 2 works of your portfolio. This artist has additional regen equal to the first work's drive cost. So it's actually exactly the same idea as scrapbook, except it gives you regen instead of dealing damage. Landscape print. Replace up to 3 of target artist's attached works with unflipped copies of a work named Landscape. Landscape is visual, has a drive cost of 0, and has do nothing. So the idea for landscape print was actually like, I guess the predecessor to the draft concept. Except instead of adding useless cards or filler cards, it turned already attached works into filler. But since drafts existed already, I changed it to portrait. Replace this artist with an artist in your vault. Attached works remain in place. So this is like, you don't have to wait for an artist to die to replace it with something else. You can just replace it immediately. Which is really good for survival. But not much else. Well, there could be a lot of applications for portrait, because the works stay in the same place. So anything that was benefiting the old artist now benefits the new one. So you can set up like portrait plays like that, I guess. Dutch angle. Deal 1 damage to target ego. 2 if the ego is above or below. Again, this is vanilla, and it's kind of like you know, like targeting based. So I changed, I decided that was more performance thing. So I changed it to action scene. Costs 4, which is quite expensive. I think it's only one of 2 works that cost 4. Shuffle 2 works from your graveyard into your portfolio. Execute the results of both onto target. So it's expensive for a reason, because it lets you play 2 works at the same time from your graveyard. It doesn't even make you pay for them either. You just execute the results directly. And it doesn't matter what school they are, how much they cost. Yeah, pretty strong. I think the applications for that are obvious. And store word mark. Discard and draw up to 1 work for each unique vowel in this artist's name. This is a weird effect. And I thought it was really a fun idea, right? But I think my the players that playtested the game, they told me that, like, they felt it was kind of silly how having certain, like, names, like having effects that affected things alphabetically or affected them because of what name they had, was like, it kind of made deck building a little unfair, I think. I don't think it was necessarily unfair, but I kind of agree with the sentiment, right? Like, maybe an artist's name shouldn't be a very significant gameplay element. I don't know. I might bring the effect back at some other point. Probably as a musical work. Just because it's so text-based. Well, for now, Wordmark is now storyboard. Retire 2 works attached to this artist and replace them with drafts. So it, you know, you put some stuff in your graveyard and you make some drafts. Nope, not going there yet. And finally, the artists. The visual artists, if you will. Ignal Sadim is the same. Multiply all damage dealt to anything at base drive / health by 2. So anything that's at their current base, the first time they take damage, it's doubled. So very strong. Very strong effect. My playtesters suggested that maybe he be toned down, but we kind of played around with it for a little while, like what we could do to change him so that he's not so strong. But anything we came up with kind of like ruined him, you know. The main problem was that when he was on the board, everything centered around him, you know. But the thing is, it benefits both players at the same time. So, I don't know. I do think you should have 0 attack, though. I don't know what I was thinking there. Lumnum Chickaroo. I can't say his name normally. I have to say it with a stupid voice every time. I don't like some people ask me where I come up with these names, and I don't really have a good answer. I just come up with a name, you know. I feel like this is a tangent, but one of my favorite parts about coming up with a fictional character is their name. Because unlike in real life, you can give a fictional character a name as ridiculous as you want without any consequences. So why not, you know? Why not give them a really silly name? Plus, I think it's a good vehicle to sort of introduce a character to somebody, right? Because the first thing you ever learn about any character is what they look like and their name, usually. So you can load a lot of like tone and meaning into a name. For instance, Lumnum Chickaroo tells you that they don't really take themselves very seriously. A bit of a quirky fella, if you will. So he has Capture the Moment. At the start of the flip phase, your opponent must discard a card if one of their artists is targeting the ego across. Capture the Moment's completely different now. So instead, he has, at the start of the play target phase, you may retire a copy attached to this artist. Okay. Yeah, so the idea here is that using Capture the Moment, you'll have more copies on you than average, right? So you can retire those copies in order to put some more stuff into your graveyard for other effects. You sort of have like a resource pool of retirable works. Samuel Bristow, Broad Stroke. At the end of the flip phase, deal 1 damage to anything that dealt damage to the same targets as this artist. This was really complicated. During playtesting, I think sometimes we would forget to use an artist's passive signature ability. Just because they were so, like, confusing. Right? We didn't want to think about them. So I'm trying to make them more digestible. So, the new Samuel Bristow, at the end of the flip phase, deal 1 damage to an ego or artist adjacent to target. Adjacent to or across from target. Everything else has it, so yeah. And Broad Stroke already allows you to do that. So you could get like 1, 2, 3. You get 3 different artists or 3 different targets in one round. Pretty nice. Row Waker used to have landscape print, but that doesn't exist anymore. It used to be that egos whose strategy leads to a tie target whichever artist has the least copies attached to them, which, paired with landscape print. But now, he's a filmmaker. He has action scene. This artist's specialty is immediately retired after executing its results. So that means that action scene, when Row uses it, immediately goes to the graveyard. Which means that you could potentially use it in another instance of action scene. Not sure if that's busted. It sounds like it could be really strong, but, you know, that's what playtesting is for, right? Carrie Glifford, our resident tattoo artist. 6-hour tattoo. Effects on results of this artist's works that trigger next round may instead be triggered on any subsequent round. This, basically it let you, like, delay. It's almost like a trap card. Like, if you had a card that said deal damage to artist next round, right? Instead of using that next round, you could save that for some other round later. You know? Which paired with the old 6-hour tattoo, because that was a next round effect. But now she has a black work tattoo. And ooh, there should be a dash there. Whenever a work whose school does not match this artist enters your graveyard, you may draw a card. So that pairs with the idea of black work being able to allow you to use works from schools that aren't necessarily yours. So if you're using a deck that has, if you have a portfolio with more than one school in it, or multiple schools, then this will be more effective. There are female artists in this game. Are they thick? They are tastefully proportioned. Mostly because I'm the one who models all of the characters, including the female ones. So yeah. I'm trying not to make any of the artists thick to use your wording. Also, welcome to the stream. You know what? Okay, so now since we're on the topic, how do you think game developers feel when they see Rule 34 of their characters? What do you think they feel? Do you think they like they're proud in a weird way? I would be very off-put myself if any of these characters ended up being 34'd pride and joy. I mean, especially since, like I mentioned just now, that all the characters are kind of based on me, so that'd be an extra layer of yikes for me personally. Pride and joy. Some of them, I'm sure. Some of them probably partake in that artwork themselves. So, you know, to each their own. And finally, the last the last artist that we'll be talking about is Bjorneve Eirud. I think is how you pronounce that. Bjorneve Eirud. They had a word mark, and whenever an effect would allow you to draw a work, you may draw from your graveyard instead of your work deck. Word mark was a work that let you, draw cards. But portrait is not that. So instead, they have artists who replace this artist gain this artist's specialty, right? And as stated before, portrait allows you to switch out your artists at will. So you have Bioneve, right? You use portrait, switch out switch in a new artist. It keeps the works there, and now they also have portrait as a specialty. So if you wanted, you could copy portrait and then switch them back next round again if you wanted to. A little bit of a weird strategy, but it might have its benefits. At the very least, you could build up a bunch of copies at once. Anyway, that's all the works and the artists that I worked on off stream. But I also worked on the egos. Since a number of mechanics changed, the egos had to change as well. So arrogant now doesn't care about base drive, just drive in general. Spent the most drive. Bombastic. That's the same. Crass did not change. Defensive did not change. Dismissive, I only changed the wording since lowest remaining drive was, I realized that it's redundant because lowest drive already implies remaining. So it's just lowest drive now. What is wrong with this? Shut up. Elitist changed completely. Used to be that it targets anything with a value of 7 or higher. But the use of the word value was only used on elitist. So it was kind of confusing to some playtesters what that even meant. And also, now with drive, base drive being as high as it is, most artists are going to have 7 or higher on some value. So instead, it targets anything that has drive equal to this ego's health. So as you can see, a cheeky little reference to the old version. So it starts with 7. And it only targets the drive value now, just to simplify things. But if this artist also happens to have like 3 health, and there's a target, and there's an artist with 3 drive, then it'll target that too. Haughty changed. Target has the highest defense or the highest health. In playtesting, we realized that this top strategy, it never got past this top strategy because some artist is always going to have the highest drive. So it would never get to use its bottom strategy ever. So I changed it to simply say at base drive, or is that wording consistent? Hold on, at base. Sorry, Kingdom Hearts music slaps. Okay, that's consistent. Overcritical. I changed their bottom strategy. Used to look at the artist with the last school alphabetically, but as per mentioned before, things that look at alphabeticalness I decided to change. So instead, their bottom strategy targets the last artist to choose target during the play target phase this round. Oh. What happened? Where did we go? Yeah, so and because of how the turn order staggering works, it's not always the last artist, but it's basically whoever is last that round. Pedantic is the same, even though it has two alphabetical effects, because I wanted at least one to have alphabetical effects, and I think this is less egregious. Pompous is the same. Pretentious targets anything that dealt damage to an ego next to it instead of to itself. And defense changed to drive. Rude with a period. That's weird. I changed received to took. I don't know if that's consistent. Take. Yeah, everything else says when it would take damage, receive. I think I'll keep took there. Took the most damage. And instead of targeting the last artist, like at the bottom, which seemed kind of unfair to anybody who just happened to be at the bottom, it just attacks randomly now, which should be fun. Self-loathing used to target who received the most healing or lowest base defense, but now it targets who has the most regen and the highest drive, which I'll need to change if I'm removing regen. Not sure if you were here, Cap, for when I was explaining, but I think I'm going to. I'm considering removing the regen and draft mechanics because I think it overcomplicates things a little bit. I think it makes it a little bloated. And it's not like the mechanics aren't like central to how the game works, you know. So yeah, I think I'm gonna change that, or revert that change, I should say. Self-righteous did not change. Regen, but I like health. Yeah, well, regen doesn't even affect health, it affects drive, right? So it lets you gain drive back. So I was thinking, why add like an extra step? Why not just have cards that directly let you regain drive without having to be this complicated, you know? Plus, I was looking at the parts for the game because I figured I needed like dice to help keep track of numbers because, you know, the health and the drive. But I realized that I probably also needed another set of dice for regen as well, for keeping track of regen. I was like, I don't know. This seems like a bit much. So I'm gonna rework everything that would have done regen to just letting you gain drive. Yeah, essentially, yeah, basically. Because that's what regen was anyway. Like, it was like, I guess it was like stacks, right? I know how much you love stack mechanics, Cap. But, like, you gain stacks of regen that could build up. And then when you I lost my train of thought. All right, but when you like attack, you gain drive equal to how many stacks you have. But like you see how complicated that is? You see how many steps there are? So I'll just cut out all the middleman stuff and turn it into drive gain. That seems so much easier. I don't know why I didn't just do that before. Anyway, self-righteous is the same. Snooty, targeted an adjacent ego. I changed it to has the most drafts, but I'll need to change that to something else now, because I want to get rid of drafts too. Well, maybe. I don't know. I don't know about drafts. I kind of like the idea of drafts. I don't know if it's like so complicated. I mean, it's just another type of work, right? It's not another number you have to keep track of. It opens up some design space too. But the whole point of drafts is that they protect you from losing works attached to your artists. And like, if there aren't works giving regen, then there isn't as much reason to get rid of attached works, because there aren't that many like there aren't that many works that have a permanent effect, you know. I'm kind of iffy on drafts. I'll have to take a look at it. Just assess the whole sort of situation. But for now, it gets an asterisk. Stubborn. Flipped a work with 0 drive cost and least amount of flipped works. Now it's changed to did not spend drive at all. And least amount of attached works. I changed this because I realized that there are only 3 works in the entire game that have 0 drive cost. So Stubborn would almost never get to use their top strategy. So did not spend drive is like the same idea, but much more likely to happen. Unimpressed is the same. Oh, lowest sum of base values changed to lowest attack. Because sum of base values now in this new version is kind of homogeneous. So it just looks at attack now. And witty, instead of attacking those with the highest amount of flipped works, it looks at the highest amount of attached works, whether they're flipped or not. And that is all of the card changes that I made off stream. As you can see, I still need to make a few new cards, which we can do on stream. And we need new egos as well. We need 18 of these, I think. Yeah, so there's still stuff for us to do, but I think we need to change these old ones first. However, actually I need to go over the other rule changes I made, which should go faster. But before I do, I'm gonna take a quick BRB. So, sit tight. I'll be right back. I'm back. Where'd word go? There it is. Okay, so we went over all the cards. So now allow me to go over the global changes. Maybe I should rename this to like rulebook changes or system changes or something. Well, I mean, this covers everything, right? It's global. Whatever. Sometimes I think about things too hard. Okay, so that we already went over. I redefined artist zones. Basically means that I established exactly what zones are so that I can refer to them later. So like, instead of being player 1, zone 1, player 2, zone 1, player 1, zone 2, player 2, zone 2. The zones are always zone 1, 2, 3, and 4. It's just that player 1 gets 1 and 3, and player 2 gets 2 and 4. Right. So, having them always static, like 1, 2, 3, 4, it lets me refer to them more easily. I also changed the way cards are placed during the setup. So beforehand it would be actually I can draw. Beforehand it would be player 2 puts their ego, player 1 puts their artist, player 1 puts their artist, player 2 puts their ego. Right. So 2, 1, 1, 2. Bing, boing, boing. Right? But I decided to simplify that. Because I was thinking, you know, on one hand I could make this simpler. On the other hand, on the second hand, where the egos are placed really doesn't have much bearing on much, you know, because like they'll target whoever they want, and other than the egos that say artist across, which would mean that it attacks yourself if it doesn't use its top strategy. But you know, that's another thing you gotta work around, you know. So now the way cards are placed instead is player 1 puts their artist, and then they put their ego, and then player 2 puts their artist, and player 2 puts their ego. Boop, boop, boop. And this also helps with keeping track of whose ego is whose. Because during playtesting, we'd often get confused about, wait, so whose ego is that? Which graveyard does it go to? And we had to like stop to think about it for a little while. Or for like a few seconds. Because we had to, oh right, because this is my artist and alternates. But if each player's cards are just on the same row, then it's much easier to keep track of. So I think that's a change for the better. He went, oh, what the heck? There we go. Regeneration. These are on the chopping block. I renamed the work deck to the portfolio. I I reduced the size of the portfolio from, what was it? It was 40 to 70 before. $25. But I decided to reduce it significantly to $25 because, first of all, there are no deck outs in this game. If you run out of cards in your deck, you just refresh your deck, right? So you don't have to worry about having a, like, if your portfolio's too small, like, you don't have to worry about you dying in a few turns, right? Because it's so small. And I think a smaller deck size is both easier to put together. So again, reducing the complexity, which is always good. And it forces you to make decisions about what cards you want to put into your deck. Because with a deck size of 40, in the base set here, there's 10 works per school. So you could just have a full playset of every single card in your school in a deck. And then some, because it could go up to 70. But with only 25, it forces you to really pick and choose which works you really want and which ones will work with your strategy, you know. I think a friend of mine shared this with me one time, and I think it rings true, right? In a deck building card game, the game doesn't start when you play the game. It starts when you're putting together the deck, you know? Like, deck building in and of itself should be part of the game, right? And it should be part of the experience overall. And it should have some level of, you know, strategy in and of itself, obviously. I think the more limiting deck size helps with that. The pile of egos and artists and drafts, I guess. I just collectively call that the vault. These, like, the portfolio and vault thing were done so that there were less decks and piles to look at, because there used to be like 4, right? There used to be the work deck, the artist deck, the ego deck, the graveyard, and then the draft pile, right? So reduce that to 3: portfolio, vault, and graveyard. Pretty simple to keep track of. I added a chapter to the rulebook about putting together portfolios and vaults for beginners, and that chapter even includes, or it will include, card lists for starter decks, right? So you can read if you don't feel like putting together your own deck, you can read the list that we already put together for them, and just choose those cards and be ready to go. That was a suggestion from a playtester, and it seemed like a no-brainer. So, okay, so this is a pretty big one. The score to win the game is 6 now. It used to be 3. The way it used to work is that the score limit is 3. You get 3 points and you win. When you retire an ego, you get 1 point. Pretty easy, right? But in every playtesting session, I would always be asked, what's the point of retiring artists if they just can come back later? And I didn't have a good answer, right? So initially, my first idea was change the score to 6. Retiring the ego gives you 2 points. And retiring an artist gives you 1 point. so that there's still incentive to target egos primarily, but there's also some reward to retiring artists. So there's actually a point to it. But at the same time, I felt like it kind of detracted from the focus of the game, like the vision I have for the game, right? You're supposed to be focusing your efforts on the egos. And the fact that you could theoretically win never having destroyed a single ego, right? I was like, that doesn't seem right. So I struck a balance, I think. So instead of giving you 1 point, instead of you gaining 1 point for retiring an artist, you lose 1 point if one of your artists gets retired. So you can't win by retiring artists, right? But retiring artists still gives you an advantage because it sets your opponent's progress backwards. In order to get full effect, you have to do 2. You have to retire 2 artists to make up for 1 ego. I think that strikes the best balance for me. And it could lead to some dynamic moments, and even allows for comebacks too, which the first idea didn't allow for. And you never want to feel like you're just completely out of the game, right? Like you'll never catch up. This format of points gives you opportunities to come back. Card anatomy comes before the setup now in the rulebook. I figured that card anatomy is probably the very first thing you should understand, because when I was playtesting, I was reading the setup, and the player would be asking me, what does any of this mean? Like, why am I doing any of this, right? I'm like, you're right. What they need is context for what they're looking at, right? They won't feel as engaged, or, they'll feel lost because they don't know what any of the cards they're setting up do. And they won't have any basis for how to set up their cards, right? Or in what positions to put them in. So, card anatomy goes first. I added some credits to the rulebook for anybody that worked on the game, including playtesters, by the way. I need to do that later. Reword effects. So I introduced some additional formats. I came up with some additional formats for players to try out that allow for more than 2 players, and even like a solitaire version of the game. Because I feel like this game is in a unique position to where, because of the way it's set up, you can have a lot of variations while still keeping it very compact. And because the enemies are automated, is in a very unique position that you can play this game by yourself. Which I don't think most, if any, like trading card games can really say. Like, you can't really play Magic the Gathering by yourself. You could, but it would be kind of janky to do that, So I came up with 4 additional formats, and they have their own section of the rule book. The lore chapter is gone because there's a new document dedicated to the lore, which I've set up already. Looks pretty nice, if I do say so myself. There's nothing written in it yet, but I like how it turned out.
Game music at its best,
And
24 hours a day. You're listening to the RP Gamers Network Radio.
and this I'll have to do when we're actually making the cards themselves. So, I know that was a lot. I figured this would take up the entire stream. But it's important that you guys have the context for everything that's happening. That you guys know that I'm actually working on this game. And hopefully it's interesting to see or to hear the thought process. I also like to be thorough. So I feel like I'd be like cheating or skipping or leaving something out if I didn't explain everything. So yeah. There we go. I suppose I could show you the rulebook since I've been talking about it so much. So let me hold on. File, close, file. There we go. Now you can see the rule book, yeah? Okay, there it is. So here's the rule book. You've seen it before. This updated version is not yet in the about section, by the way. I'll do that later. Yeah, there's card anatomy. Right after how to win, card anatomy is next. Oh, right. Okay, so something got messed up when I was editing all this. So here's building portfolios and vaults. It goes over the basics, how many works you can have in each, what you put in each. Some tips for what you should think about when you're putting your deck together. Pretty basic tips, nothing too complex. Mostly because I haven't played it enough to know any like really juicy, you know, like hot tips. But yeah, these are pretty basic things that you can think about when you're putting something together. This is where the starter card lists will go. The name of the list, you know, to give it some flavor. And everything that's in the portfolio and everything that's in the vault. Right, very easy to read. Here's the alternative forms of play. The name of the format and then all of the changes. These are obviously intended to be played after you've played a handful, at least a handful of games in the regular format. So 4-player, basically each player gets their own zone. So they get one artist each. I imagine it'd be pretty chaotic. But a fun way to get more than 2 people involved. Solitaire. All 4 and this side note, this is something I discovered fairly recently, is that Solitaire is a catch-all term for a single-player game. Or at least a single-player version of a game. I thought it referred specifically to Solitaire. What is it called? It's like well, you know, like the Solitaire you'd have on your those old computers, right? I thought it was exclusive to that, but you can have Solitaire anything if it's a single-player version. So in this one, you get all 4 zones to yourself. You don't have an opponent to trip you up. It's about like putting together just the optimal strategy, seeing how fast you can win, basically. Schism is the name I gave to it's like artists on one side and then artists on the other. So you're attacking other artists instead of attacking egos. And as noted here, you can have like 2 players on each side, or you could have 4 players on one and 2 on the other. Or you could have 2 players on one side and 1 on the other. You know, very customizable. You can have up to 8 players at once, which sounds kind of horrible, honestly, but you could try it. You could even customize it more granularly than that, right? Like one side, the first 3 zones can be 1 player, and the bottom zone can be 1 if you really wanted. It wouldn't be very balanced, but you could. And Super Ego is an asynchronous format where 2 players or 4 players or 1 player or whatever has control of the artists, and then an additional player is in control of the egos. So like you play as you can play as like the enemies basically. Here are the credits. These people are, I chose not to, I'm using their usernames for now. Until I can get confirmation that they want their names in the credits. You're right there, Cap. So thanks for playtesting. If you I mean, I guess since you're already here, you can let me know if you want your username or your real name in the credits. Or if you want to be in the credits at all. I asked some people and they said they don't want to be credited at all. Which, I mean, I'm okay. That's your choice, I guess. But yeah. Just let me know that. You can DM me that if you want. I use, of course, my real name, because, you know, special thanks area, and, yeah, it's the end of the credits. So that's all the new stuff in the rulebook. Now, I know we're going over time a little bit, but allow me to show you what the beginnings of the lore look like. I'm very excited about this. So here it is. I found this really cool font. Bell MT. It looks kind of like Times, right? But it also has this sort of like handwritten a little bit like effect. Like it's sort of thicker in some places and less thick in others, like it curves around a little bit. I thought it looked like a nice blend between a typeface and like handwritten. So the idea here is that this document is a document written in universe by one of the artists about their experience in the story. And this document will be updated as the game like releases new expansions and stuff, and will be the main, or will be the source for all the story and the plot and the lore that the game has. Again, it's not like a very in-depth, very complicated story, but I figured there was a good opportunity for world building, and yeah, this is the method by which I decided to do it. It's designed to emulate sort of like a as it says here, a journal. This is the account of Mieus and the Ego War, a collective journal by Kara Perpin. Mieus being the country that this game takes place in. And the only thing I have right now is the table of contents, but I thought this turned out looking really nice. And that's there. That's copy pasted from earlier, just so I could have that information there. But yeah, I thought this turned out looking really nice. Like this seems to me like something you'd see in like a old fashioned encyclopedia or something. But yeah, I'm really excited to be able to work on this on stream. I plan to do a lot of this writing on stream. That should be fun. But with that, I have managed to explain everything within one stream, which I was worried I wouldn't be able to do. I mean, I kind of went over, but whatever. I mean, I feel a little bad that we didn't actually get to do anything new today, but you know, for all the aforementioned reasons, want to get all that out there. So, thank you to everybody that decided to show up today. Everybody that's watching and listening, supporting the stream. I appreciate you being here, especially when it's just me rambling on about my about a card game I'm putting together. I'm realizing that maybe a lot of it didn't make any sense. Maybe you just like to have somebody talking in the background and you don't really care what I'm talking about, but that's fine. I appreciate you all the same. Next stream is actually, I forgot to update my schedule, but I plan on doing my next stream on Thursday and not Wednesday, because I will be busy on Wednesday. Wednesday afternoon. So we'll have Thursday and Friday streams this week. I won't make the mistake of doing Tuesday again. I felt really dumb because on Tuesdays I work in the afternoon, but on Thursdays I only work in the morning. So I don't know why I ever chose Tuesday instead of Thursday, but there you go. Some Justin lore there. But yeah, Thursday, same time, 6 to 8, and then Friday, 6 to 9. I'll be doing more of this stuff, more Ego and Opus development log, I guess, dev log. So, if you're into that, after 2 hours of me talking about it, I would love to have you there. Tell your friends, I guess, if they're interested in following a new homemade trading card game project. Well, it's not a trading card game. A new deck building card game project. Then send them over my way. I'd love to have them. Have them contribute their ideas. Because some of the best ideas come from collaboration, you know. So the more eyes I can have on it, the better for everybody. But with that, again, thank you for being here. Hope to see you in the next one. Until then, good night, good evening, good morning, and goodbye.